hello and a very warm welcome to a special showing right here on Brand Equity. I'm at Vikhroli at the Godrej complex, extremely swanky, and I'm here to interview the CEO of the Godrej Consumer Products, which is Sudhir Sitapati. Sudhir, I haven't met you since your leaver stint. It's the first time I'm interacting with you. Many congratulations, belated, but nevertheless. And also, just about 2 years now?
Yeah, a little bit more than 2 years.
As the captain of the Godrej Consumer Ship?
Yeah.
So, before I dive into more specific questions, you took over in the middle of extreme uncertainty. All of us didn't know what had hit us. How would you say your transition to take on the mantle of the CEO has been, given the fact that you joined right in the middle of absolute chaos and mayhem?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a really interesting and fun transition. I think certainly the fact that I joined in the middle of COVID was a bit unique because it took me some time to get to know the company, the culture, the people, because the first couple of months, everything was virtual, which isn't great when you're a new CEO. But I think soon after I joined, I think COVID was getting over. And after that, it's been a fun ride. We've got a really interesting business across categories, across the world. So a lot for me to learn, but a lot in common as well. It's still in consumer goods. It still has the same processes. It's a multinational. So some same, some different.
What would you say is the big difference for you? I mean, Godrej versus Lever, because Godrej is, promoter-owned and Levers is, a global multinational, professionally run. What would you say would be the big differences for you personally?
Well, I came in looking for differences, but actually what surprised me has been the similarities of the two companies. That's been surprising to me. I think both of them are very, very highly values-driven company with a lot of focus on sustainability. You see the Godrej campus here and you see the mangroves. Both of them have got great governance. Both of them are multinationals. One, of course, is much larger. One is smaller. Both of them have got an old heritage and a lot of values and culture. So the similarities have been more striking to me than the differences. They're both very professionally run companies, both listed. So I would say that what's surprising is the similarity rather than the difference.
Okay, fair enough. You've come in 2021. I think Godrej was in desperate need of a fresh set of eyes and having an outside-in perspective. So if I ask you to just flash back, and now that you've spent some time in understanding how the company is, if you could tell me about the journey for Godrej Consumer starting 2017 until now, 23, and do a SWOT for me in terms of, where your strengths lie and of course, things that need work on.
I think when I look at the SWOT for Godrej, I think there are three remarkable strengths. The first is governance, which is world-class. It's a world-class multinational governance and ethics and integrity. The second is innovation. It's a very innovative company. Historically has been innovating for India, typically at the bottom of the pyramid. And three, it's a frugal company. So cost focus, notwithstanding our office, is a highly focused on costs. I think there were two weaknesses in the company. One is, I think the marketing and market development or category development as a DNA wasn't strong enough. So it was great products, innovated, bring them to market. They gain some market share, some size, and then they kind of peter off or taper off a little bit. And I think the second probably is a consequence of the first, which is not doing more of the same thing and trying to do new things. It was a company that was too complex for its size. So broadly speaking, I don't know about SWOT, but this is the strength and weakness. So I guess as a CEO, and it's something imprinted in my mind, that the most important thing in a company actually is to persist with the strengths rather than to correct the weakness. The second most important thing is to correct the weakness. So if you have to choose between playing on strengths and correcting weaknesses, what I've tried to do is to play more on the strengths and in a targeted way, try and sort out these two weaknesses.
Okay. But if you just look at its course in 2017, 2018, particularly when Godrej wasn't faring too well, and Nisaba has actually said it quite vocally that it was in somewhat of a down phase. Can you elucidate? Can you articulate what was going on at that phase and what has changed or is changing as we enter 22, 23, 24?
Its DNA is an innovation, and a lot of innovations, they can come at an early stage of a company. And while it's an old company, the new Godrej, which is a combination of Godrej soaps and the Goodnight hit business, is really 2010 odd. So it's a 100-year-old and it's 10-year-old at the same time. So a lot of these new innovations, they did really well. After innovations hit a certain amount of penetration, let us say, for argument's sake, around 20%, you need a new set of tricks to get users who kind of know about the category but have rejected it to start using it. Right. And that was a transition. Many of the categories like household insecticide, hair color, moved from infancy to not maturity, but let's say to adulthood. And the tricks required for adulthood are different from the tricks required for infancy.
And now you're saying you've kind of charted that course for that deeper penetration to happen.
Yes, I think that is certainly, while not losing this sort of flurry of and the energy behind innovation and new products, to also make sure that those it's like the 5 stages of man, till you're 5% or 5 years penetration, it's infancy, then you have adolescence till about 21. Many of our categories have crossed adolescence and have now come into adulthood.
Right.
Then, of course, there are categories after 60 which go into maturity, which are to deal with separately. But now we're a company with a lot of categories in adulthood, and we have to deal with them slightly differently.
So a lot of the Q2 results are out, and something that is staring everybody in the face, including, I would say, GCPL, is the fact that there is a lot of pressure in terms of on mainstream products, while everybody's premium portfolio seems to be doing well. I think that would stand true even for your balance, so to speak. Any particular reason you think that's the case?
It is true that post-COVID, the KShape recovery kind of continues, and it gets exacerbated, where the top 20% of channels, top 20% of consumers, products, it is booming. But there is definitely a pressure in the balance 80%. I don't know what the underlying causes are.
Yeah.
I think the question is, how do we respond to it as a company? That is the question that we are tackling.
And how are you responding?
I think there are 2 things. One is you got to ask the question that categories that the top 20% of consumers are consuming, you need to really step up marketing investments there. And in the categories that the bottom 80% are consuming, you have to increase access and affordability. So it's a K-shaped recovery and a K-shaped strategy where media innovations, media investments, innovations, etc., are more premium right now as they stand, but a lot more of the basics, cost maximization, access, pricing, those are the kind of bottom 80%.
So would you say that because this trend, we're seeing this trend, and premiumization, of course, is also more profitable, that companies are focusing more on their premium portfolio rather than their mass portfolio, because that just makes more sense in terms of profitability and revenues?
Tools available for the premium, so invest in premium and make mass affordable is roughly the way we are. Plenty of examples. For example, one of our categories, air care. We have Godrej Air is really booming, and that's a premium category. We just launched an innovation for cars, and it's just selling like hotcakes. On the other hand, some of our core categories like hair creme or household insecticide, we've brought lower priced SKUs, democratized these SKUs to grow. So I think there's growth available in both segments, but it is very, very different set of actions required to win in both of these segments.
So would you say that, the middle of the pyramid, so to speak, is currently a little bit under pressure because I don't think salaries are going up that much. There is a lot of inflationary pressures, and so the whole spending pattern of middle India has been kind of compromised, and which is why you see not so much uptake.
When I look at the results of companies across and see what you and I both see in the newspaper, and then from our own experience, that does seem to be a fair conclusion of what's happening right now in the market. But Sonali, these things change quite fast. So as a company, while you have to respond to the present, you have to also think about the fact that the future may not be the present. So suddenly it may become from a K, it may become a V, and both segments may start growing, or the other way around. So at all points in time, you have to respond to the present, but you can't put all your eggs in the present. You also have to think of the future.
Sure. Another big confusing aspect is this whole the rural narrative, right? A lot of people said that yes, it was muted and the rural story wasn't performing as well as urban, but now people are saying they're seeing green shoots coming up. There is some kind of recovery they're seeing, but of course that pace is not as envisaged. So what is really happening in the rural arena?
I mean, the green shoots have been coming for a long time, but none of them have really grown into a fruit-bearing tree yet. So, we'll have to see. I mean, green shoots are only good if the tree grows, right? So that hasn't happened yet. I hope it happens soon. And it should. I mean, there's no particular reason why it shouldn't. These are cyclical, and other people will analyze why this is the case. But definitely rural, small town, low income, is under pressure.
You've talked about democratization of products. My question is, if you had to choose and prioritize democratize versus premiumize, as somebody who's steering this ship, which makes more business sense, just a more prudent decision?
I think for Godrej as a company, given our vision and purpose, which is to bring the goodness of health and beauty to consumers in emerging markets, our raison d'etre is democratization. That's what we exist for. Some of it is democratization of premium categories, like let's say air care. It's been around since I was a kid. There have been air care products. Yeah. But now, we launched some years ago a Godrej Air Pocket, which is there hanging in bathrooms, and that is democratized fragrancing in the bathrooms. So it could well be take premium categories that only the top 20% kind of use, and then figure out ways in which the others use it. But I would say that for Godrej as a company, democratization is probably our DNA. It's not just about which part of the market is growing. It's also what can you do better, or what are you well equipped to do. And I would say we're well equipped to do democratization. More than premiumization, not to say that, there won't be, obviously in these things, there'll always be parts of the business where you will premiumize. But I would say when I look at all our categories, we are certainly, take these cool, fresh, under-penetrated categories, democratize them and drive penetration. I guess that's how we look at life.
Okay. Just looking at the industry for a moment, if I request you to remove your Godrej hat and wear the industry hat, most of the growth that FMCG is seeing currently, it seems to be led by discounting and price cuts, right? And of course, the focus is volume growth. Do you think that's a healthy pattern, or is that what the situation is currently, and so we just have to deal with it?
I'm not sure I agree with the fact that FMCG, is the focus is on price cuts and volume discounts. I think if there are two ways of looking at it. One is that if you look at a long period of time, FMCG margins have improved quite significantly. So if you were
long period,
take any period you want.
Okay.
5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Okay. If you take the EBITDA margins of the aggregate listed FMCG companies, margins have only improved. So the criticism can be the other way around, if any. But it's not that the category has over discounted. In the really short term, what happened is that last financial year, costs of some raw materials were really inflated. Yeah. So, obviously many of us took up prices, and now that they've corrected, we've brought it down. But that is more responsive to the cost of commodities going up and down. But I don't think that that's been the long-term trend in FMCG. I don't think it's been.
And this whole focus on volume growth?
Focus on volume growth, I mean, again, I can't speak for industry, but I can certainly speak for
You can speak for industry, come on.
Well, I mean, I'm not privy to what the focus is. Certainly a lot of the conversation that everyone's having, which one, sees in the newspapers, is a revival of volume growths in mass categories, certainly in FMCG. So I know that a lot of FMCG folks are focusing on volume growth revival. I'm not sure that price cuts are the way to it. A lot of it has to do with investments and relevance and category development and so on and so forth.
Just to understand, your vision and your play in the next few years at GCPL. If you could take me through what you're envisaging in terms of innovation and experimentation in your premium portfolio and, of course, your mass portfolio.
The way we look at our business is category development of under-penetrated categories. We're really interested in categories which have penetration below 20%.
Which would those be?
I mean, within our own categories, all of them actually. Air care is very low. Deodorants, which we just acquired, is low. Premium condoms is low, which we just acquired. Even household insecticide and hair color, the creme format, which is where we operate in, they're at the higher end of what we operate, which is at about 20. The only category that we operate in, which is universally penetrated, is soaps.
But that's a slow category, right?
That's a slow category, and that's where it is. And that also we'll have to find ways of seeing how we can, take up category value there. But let's leave that aside. So the rest of the categories, our focus is on taking up penetration of these categories. And our focus in innovation is also in driving category penetration. Let me give you two examples from the Godrej portfolio. One that we're very proud of is Magic Hand Wash, which is hand wash liquids is an under-penetrated category. If you met consumers, they'd say it's expensive. I might as well use soap. And we launched a sachet of magic powder, which you go home, mix in a bottle, and use it as a hand wash. What we now call powder to liquid, or P2L. That subsegment of hand wash has now become 40% by volume of the hand wash category, driven by Godrej Magic. So that's a really good example of innovation, democratization, and category development, right? Another good example is that, our biggest brand is Goodnight, and we had Goodnight machines at about 100 rupees. And a lot of people said, we don't want to move from coils to Goodnight because 100 rupees is too high. And how do you make a sachet out of an electric machine? So what we did at the beginning of this year was to launch a small machine for the electrics at 50 rupees. Which took some engineering because you've got to remove parts and so on and so forth. So both these are examples of all the three. In a way, they're premiumization because you're taking people from coils to, they're also democratization. They're bringing the price of this down. They're using innovation. So these are two examples of how we're driving category development.
Okay, I get it. And this is mostly to make it more accessible, make your premium offerings more accessible. How are you taking the notch up in your premium portfolio? Or how do you plan to?
No, I think our premium portfolio, a good example of our premium portfolio is that we're the market leaders in air care in Indonesia. And we had a brand which was a Stella Matic, which was this machine that I think is about 500 rupees, which sprays perfume every 10 minutes in the room. And that was a blockbuster in Indonesia. And so we saw that blockbuster and we brought it to India, and it's done really well for us. So that's a good example. Relatively fewer examples in premiumization. As I told you, our focus is democratization. But I guess the insight here, and one of the advantages GCPL has, is that because we've got businesses across the world, and some businesses that are mass in other countries become premium in India because of the income. So the ability for us to bring in international products into India, like the case of Godrej Airmatic, is probably how we look at premiumization. We have a product called Hit Anti-Roach Gel, which sells at 300 rupees, which is this gel that you put in various corners of your house, and it kills the entire nest of cockroaches. That, when we started, it's been a product that's been around for a long time. We felt it was a premiumization opportunity in the larger scheme of things. And when we started advertising it, that started doing really well.
Okay.
So these are the kind of, one of them is an import, one of them is already in our portfolio. Some investment did really well.
An insight I'd like to understand better from you is the relationship between the lunar calendar and demand drivers.
Yeah.
You've had some experience understanding that. If you can just share those insights, it seems quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we all plan our demand planning and things like that based on the solar calendar, which is the Western calendar. We say Q1, Q2, Q3. Yeah. But in India, definitely the lunar calendars. And an example is that in the month of Shravan, which happens usually around July, a lot of consumers in Western India don't cut their hair, don't color their hair. We kind of know this. So every July is a little lower than the rest of the year. Now, in the Indian calendar, what happens is there's every few years there's an Adhik Mas or an extra month where the lunar and solar calendar merge, right? And once in about 20 years, Shravan has a repeat. So this year, Shravan had a repeat. There were 2 Shravan months, and therefore for 2 months in a row, people didn't color, cut their hair, eat meat. So a lot of my friends in the meat industry, we've also got a business in the meat industry, all of them had a demand hit. So that's been a wake-up call for us to understand the Indian calendar better, because a lot of demand-driving events happen with the Indian calendar as well. So to kind of marry both when looking at demand forecasts.
You're an FMCG veteran. During COVID, people talked about grand shifts in consumer behavior. Somehow, once we've normalized, I think we've all gone back to our normal selves. Do you see any great path-breaking change in consumer behavior or trends?
I don't see any change in consumer behavior or trends. The only one that I do see a definite change in behavior is working from home and working from anywhere versus working from office. That has been an enduring change of COVID, which has not fully gone back, and I don't think it should actually go back to the...
Does Godrej also follow that?
No, we have a relatively relaxed policy, I think. I think COVID has allowed us, for example, we have an advertising department, which is, an in-house agency called Lightbox. And the head of Lightbox sits out of London. And we're perfectly comfortable with it. He comes down to India once a month or once in 6 weeks. But we're perfectly comfortable with top talent staying in London, working from there. And everyone's got so used to this digital way of working that, it's just become very natural. It's not that we didn't have the technology prior to COVID, but we weren't habituated to it. But that habit has broken. That has been very, very empowering, I have a meeting, for example, between 5 and 6 today. And I'm going to take it in my car, which I couldn't have done earlier, right? So I have my iPad, I put it on my car, stick it on my car, and at 6 o'clock I have to be somewhere else. So it's a massive productivity improvement. I think our personal view is that, and Godrej has been one of them, that companies have to be far-sighted and open-minded, and you can't turn the clock on this.
I'm glad you brought about your in-house agency. So this Lighthouse, which is been conceptualized and executed within Godrej this year, is really a trend that we are seeing. At least in the West, the trend has really picked up, where large companies and brands do in-house creative processes. In India, I think you are one of the big companies who's done it first. Not many large companies have still totally got their creative processes in-house. But it's definitely a start of a trend. And my question is, why did you find the need to do this in-house? What's the current lacunas in the advertising model at the moment, which was not performing to its ability that you had to do this?
I mean, look, before I joined Godrej, one of the things I used to really admire about GCPL was the quality of design of its products, packaging, but also product design. I really admired it. There was a product called Air Twist I used to use in my car. It's a really cool looking device for fragrancing in the car. I really admired the packaging of Synthol from a distance. So I kept wondering, how is Godrej able to do it? In the back of my mind. When I came in here, I realized that for the last decade, we had an in-house design studio that was doing it. And it sort of sparked an idea saying, here's a company that I thought was doing, one of the things it was doing really well was design, and design was in-house. And I think, when we started setting up, structuring ourselves in marketing, Tom, who was one of the founders of Be Blunt, was around and I said, hey, why don't you look after the advertising department from our side? And he was a really creative guy. And we were realizing that it wasn't that difficult for us to, contribute creatively. And then we said, hey, what if we went and hired some really good creative people? We already have a creative culture in the organization. I think that's important. Because of Design Lab, we had a creative culture in the organization. We said, what if we superimpose advertising onto the Design Lab? And we said, let's set up Lightbox. We've been thrilled. We've been thrilled on many dimensions with Lightbox. We've been thrilled with the quality of work. And we measure the quality of work through, pre-testing on link and on results in the market. That's how we measure it. we're less concerned. Clients have generally, by the way, been a lot less concerned about advertising awards. So it doesn't really matter to us, right? Like, going on stage and receiving an award. So this is what matters to us, Link, and so that's really worked. It's been really good in terms of speed, and it's been good in terms of cost. So on all three dimensions, so far we're very happy with Lightbox and what it's done for us. I mean, look, we're really lucky to be in India and in Bombay in particular, which is, I think, a global hub of advertising. So there's a plethora of advertising talent that's available here.
Sure.
So it's not that hard to get some people to come here, give them an office space like this, they enjoy it and get cracking.
Sudhir, that, what you've just said is, if I play this out to advertising folks, I mean, they should press the panic button, because if more and more CEOs decide to do this, then already a struggling industry may lose the plot completely. So just to understand and maybe give the industry a sense of, what loopholes need to be plugged within the advertising model, what is not being delivered might be a good understanding for them.
The thing is, over the last decade odd, a lot of companies have really started spending a lot more money on advertising than they were. Advertising spends are huge. We ourselves as Godrej are going to spend roughly 1,000 crores on advertising this year. That's a large amount of money. Now, it has been paradoxical that the agency, with this kind of explosion of advertising spends and explosion of creativity, available of creative talent, a lot of people in the advertising agency, feel that as people, there's probably not valued enough or not compensated enough. And I would say that I don't know whether this is the right model or the old model work, whatever model that works, as long as it is good for people in the creative business and people in the advertising business, then I think it's good news, right? If creatives have better opportunities, better compensation, better career prospects, whatever model does that is good for advertising, I would say. I mean, advertising is not agencies, advertising is advertising, right?
Yeah, so you're saying that lens needs to be now looked at, because the agency model, the agency business is clearly suffering. Although and it's interesting that you're saying brands are spending so much more on advertising, yet they're not reaping the fruits of it. And we have such a big content glut. I'm not sure if it's translating into sales. That's another question I want to ask you. Not just for Godrej, but generally, the kind of content glut that is currently in the market, do you think there is some kind of consumer fatigue?
I mean, as a general rule of thumb, I am personally not very much of a believer in a multiplicity of content and content overload from a brand. I much prefer a brand to have a single message, a single piece of audiovisual communication, and a single piece of static communication saying what the brand does, right? And then kind of repeating it with boring consistency year after year to people. But that's my camp. It's perhaps my prejudice as well. So I'm certainly never been enamored. And one of the things we're doing in Lightbox is not using it as an in-house agency to go and create 10 pieces of content a day. We want to create 10 to 12 pieces of content a year. That's it. And to simplify messaging around that. So, I mean, I was never a big believer in content, and if now you feel and others feel that there's a content glut and people are getting, I'm not surprised.
So you're saying essentially the whole mantra today of engage the customer across channels and have almost 10 to 12 pieces being pushed out, whether it be posts or it be content pieces or whatever, is a bit much.
I mean, I don't know if it's a bit much. It works for some people, works for some businesses. I look at these things a little coldly in terms of return on investment. I would say, see, if you have 10 pieces of content, the general rule of thumb is that the best of those 10 pieces of content gives you 80% of the awareness of a brand. Right? So when you're putting 10 pieces of content, your best one doesn't get as much footage as the balance 9, which aren't as good. So you're always better off finding, if out of the 10, the single one, you're better off. And for whatever work that we've done, even on social media and Facebook, when you put out 10 posts, what we realize is that one post is the one that really does well. It goes back to an old principle of marketing, which is get that one single piece of communication that communicates what you want to say and convinces consumers to try your category or brand, and then go after that piece. You think of our own memory of advertising, there'll be very few and far between, right?
Yeah, but most of the old ads, I mean, even if you play the tune, I'll remember it.
Correct. So it has to do with the same thing as fewer messages, higher consistency. I don't think that digital is a new medium. So, and I'm not saying that digital is a powerful medium. Lots of people spend a lot of time. It doesn't change the old rules of marketing. The old rules of marketing are, whether it was print or outdoor or TV or digital, that principle of having a powerful piece of communication and broadcasting it at a certain frequency to a lot of people, I am among those who certainly, and look, marketing is not an exact science, and I'm happy to change my mind also if I'm able to see data the other way around.
How have you seen the landscape of retail change? Today we have of course, we have modern trade, we have kiranas, we have quick commerce, right? So there's a lot. How are you as a company looking, and as an industry, a retail industry, how are you looking at this entire landscape, and what are the big changes that have happened and you expect to see in the future?
Let me answer the question on what are the changes I've seen. I mean, definitely modern trade is a change. I mean, I started off in sales 25 years ago or 23 years ago. The growth of modern trade in the last 10, 15 years has been quite exponential, though I guess it was expected. In fact, we were always wondering in India, why isn't modern trade growing and why is general trade as large as it is? So I think the one that has surprised me in the last year or two has been the pickup of quick commerce. I have nothing to say really on the economics of it and so on, that I don't know, but certainly consumers like it a lot. So there's a lot of consumer demand for quick commerce that is visible to us. E-commerce in general is doing well in FMCG. Within e-commerce, quick commerce is doing particularly well. I don't know if it's a swallow or it's a summer. I don't know where it'll head, but that's something that's that has surprised me in the, so these are the two things.
And GT remains robust.
I mean, GT remains robust and still very large in India. It's still 80%, but as we were talking earlier in the program, there is a general pressure on low-income consumers, GT as a channel, rural. So, in that entire thing, GT is certainly not growing, gangbusters.
Sure. Of course, during COVID, we saw this great impetus that e-commerce got simply because nothing else was accessible. But what's interesting is people thought that was a habit changer, because now you're forced into it and it's grown so robustly, and that will remain because of the convenience and all the factors that it enables. But we've seen e-commerce growth in the post-COVID era, and it's not growing as much as it should. Like, there's a comeback of physical retail broadly everywhere, and e-commerce has actually seen a dip in terms of how they've been growing. So
no, I think in grocery, so what you're saying might be true in some other categories. In grocery, if you forget about the COVID thing, grocery e-commerce is growing at a certain rate, pre and post e-commerce. I think there has been quick commerce has been a delta that has come on to grocery, which other categories may or may not have had. So that's unique to grocery.
Okay, and what about now? Kirana is also becoming quite sophisticated, having WhatsApping your list and it being delivered to you. So they've also kind of smartened up in the way to deliver to customers. I'm only ask you this because yes, quick commerce, is definitely being used, but I know you said that you don't know about the economics of it. The sustainability of that quick commerce going forward, there are different debates on that, and whether it'll actually, stay the course or not.
No, I'm the wrong guy to have the debate with. But I can only tell you that consumers like it. Consumers like to order. And my experience has been that when consumers like things, then companies find ways of making it profitable. But certainly there is a need for which consumers are willing to pay a premium, that I want to bake a cake today, and my kid has asked half an hour ago, and I need the ingredients in 20 minutes, and I don't have the time to go down. I don't mind paying some amount of premium. I don't know what the premium is. Enough consumers have told me that use case. I think the other question, Sonali, is that we don't spend too much time in GCPL worrying about the future of channels. I think the question we worry about is the future of categories in our brands. And we have to service all the channels in a way that is equitable. And whatever channel grows, that is for the channels to sort out. We have to be present, and we've got to be the best experience as a brand in the channel.
Sure.
We don't have to, as FMCG companies, take bets on channels. We have to take bets on categories.
Absolutely. I know that you've talked about how your focus going forward. But if I had to ask you, What is new, exciting, and innovative from the Godrej consumer stable that consumers and people who are covering the company are going to look forward to? I know lots is in the planning phase and you're not ready to reveal, but if you could give me broad contours of what one can expect, that would be nice.
No, I think you can expect a lot of innovations from us.
At least if you give me category specific.
I think in all the categories that we operate in, you can expect innovations from us in the deodorants category that we've just acquired. You can expect it from us in household insecticide, which is our core category, in air care. In pretty much every category, the question you will see a certain innovations from us. They may not be huge in number, but I think they will be smaller, higher impact, and focused on developing categories. So that's what you can see, expect from us.
What about expanding categories? With your acquisition, you've got into condoms and deodorants, which is, of course, and we're still seeing that integration and that play coming forth. But are you looking at expansion of categories which are akin to categories that you already operate in?
Yeah, I mean, more. Again, I would say, just as I said, our focus is on our categories to democratize them, these premium categories, and a little bit less on premiumization. I think as I think about our funnel and ideas that are coming up, which I can't quite share till they come up, there are some ideas on expansion, but I would still say bulk of it is on getting people to adopt existing categories.
Okay. Outlook for 2024, and everybody's talking about the fact that it's going to be quite muted, because of the fact that, of course, we are the shining spot. But the fact of the matter is, if the West is slowing, we're slowing at a slower pace. But the fact of the matter is, we are also slowing. I
think what I can say is that we will not be happy in GCPL till we hit double-digit volume growth, regardless of what happens to the economy. If the economy grows at 7 or 8, it's easier to reach 10. If it grows at 5 or 6, it's more difficult to reach 10. So rather than worry too much about the economy, the question to ourselves is, how do we grow at close to double-digit volumes, not double-digit value? That's the goal that we've set ourselves. We're some distance away from that goal, but we hope every year we get closer and closer to that goal.
What are your biggest challenges as CEO of GCPL?
We have two big challenges. One is that the household insecticide category, where we are the market leader, has not grown fast enough over the last 6-7 years, and we've got to take up the growth rate of the category. That's number one challenge.
Why is that?
I mean, it's a long and complex set of reasons, but primarily the market is not premiumizing. There's been a lot of influx in India with illegal incense sticks, which people are burning agarbattis to kill mosquitoes. That has been the primary. So normally markets like us, they premiumize into premium formats. These agarbattis are, imported with chemicals from China, and they're pretty illegal. So that's the
I didn't know they're illegal.
Yeah, very much.
Because they're available in kiranas.
They're available in kiranas, but it's a regulated industry and it's totally illegal.
Oh, okay.
So if you shouldn't be using it because you don't know what's in it. So that's probably the root cause, and so we got to sort that problem out. I guess the second problem or the second issue for GCPL is we've got a large international business, especially in Africa, which we've got to make more profitable structurally. So this is the twin issues facing GCPL.
But Indonesia, you're completely happy.
I think Indonesia is structurally a good country, had some issues in the short term, has come back, bounced back. India also structurally good, with the exception of this household insecticide, which we've got to lick this problem. Africa, good market, lots of good things. Profitability is an issue, so we've got to solve it.
And any expansion into newer markets?
No, I think our focus geographically will continue to be on our existing markets. Possibly categories, as you just saw, we entered, deodorants and sexual wellness. So this is what we're going to do.
Okay, fair enough. Well, on that note, if I can just ask you one last question on general outlook of 2024 for the industry.
I mean, I still think it'll be tough.
It'll be tough, right? Yeah, because we need to see it as it is.
I think it'll be tough.
It'll be tough.
For consumption in India in general, I suspect it'll still be tough.
And this recovery will take some time, right? Where we see the boom period again.
That I don't know. I don't know how much time it will take in the foreseeable, because we're sitting here right now in the second half of 23.
Yeah.
So one can at least look into first half of 24, right? So I think it will be tough for some time.
Okay, fair enough. On that note, thank you so much, Sudhir, and hopefully the festive season, is angelic for all industries, including yours, and in particular GCPL. Thank you so much for spending time and explaining different concepts and insights to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rali. Thank you.